Growing up in the West, my parents would occasionally treat me to lobster for my birthday. At any moment, the lobster juice can just shoot out from the leg, and it can be a pain for my parents to clean off afterwards. But this restaurant was unique, and it prepared an apron. Well, more like a plastic bib, for its customers. I thought this was a rare experience only offered at one store, but during my trip to Tokyo and Seoul, it came as a total shock to me as to how many restaurants out there offered aprons just freely. When you are visiting these countries as a tourist, what should you be on the lookout for if you want to protect the single t-shirt that you brought with you on the trip from the delicious juices of kimchi or ramen oil splatters? Why is this a common item that you can ask for at many restaurants? When I was young, my parents used to tell me to unfold the paper napkin and scrunch up a corner to slide it into the collar of my shirt. I definitely looked a little bit like Edgeworth from Ace Attorney, and I remember it being a bit uncomfortable because it was just so scratchy and rough. I wouldn't call myself a messy eater, but my parents drilled into my brain that it would suck to have to wash something just after one day of use. Over time, I forgot about this, or maybe it was because I didn't want to be the only one at the table who did it when eating out with my friends. I just remember doing that a lot whenever I traveled with my parents around the world. In Korea, I first noticed the apron availability at a Korean Chinese restaurant serving thick, saucy noodles of jjajangmyeon and spicy red soup noodles called jampang. You first order at the kiosk before sitting down, and the aprons were just located right next to the kiosk. If you forgot, you can also pick one up next to the self-service area where the pickled radish was located. I didn't notice it until I saw other diners wearing the apron. But I was wearing a dark t-shirt that day, so I didn't opt to wear one, but I was also hungry and lazy. The apron strings were also really long, so even after wearing it, your upper chest would still be showing. That didn't make the aprons that effective here when they're supposed to protect you from splatter. You can generally find aprons in restaurants that serve stews, spicy noodles, or even at sizzling places like Korean barbecue. And a majority of these aprons were cloth aprons. I make this distinction because in Japan, you can mostly find paper aprons instead. If it's not an obvious location for you to pick it up yourself, you'll actually see a little note at the table. It'll say something like, "We have aprons available," and if you forget to pick one up at the ordering kiosk, you can simply just ask the server, "Apron o kudasai," or even just mumbling out "apron," can usually get the message across. I see these paper aprons everywhere, and I mean everywhere. Ramen shops, curry shops, sizzling steaks that you eat standing up. Maybe aside from the washoku, traditional Japanese cuisines, or sushi shops, they are everywhere. In my experience, these aprons absorb grease very fast, but are also very thin. They can protect you from quick splatters, but don't go expecting it'll save you from a big spill. A reason why aprons are so common is that you're expected to slurp the piping hot noodles. Okay. To a certain extent, you don't need to exaggerate the sound, please. Many salarymen and women often grab a quick bite for lunch, and the apron helps keep their suits and shirts from being messy, keeping them looking clean and professional. Now, I understand most Western restaurants I generally went to with my parents, that's a tier above fast or cheap food, has this concept of a cloth or napkin that you place on your lap. Apparently, you're supposed to do that even for paper napkins, but I just usually keep that on the table. And this is pretty consistent across the world. But for Korean or Japanese restaurants in the West, the option of an apron is just never present. Though, realistically speaking, I never asked for one either. I just didn't know they even existed. One reason I can think of why aprons aren't that common over here is because there just isn't that many soupy things on the menus in general. Well, I know that soup stores like Panera Bread are a thing, but it doesn't have those long noodles that can swing back and forth before it arrives in your mouth. Pasta is one dish I could think of that could have splatters, but even then, I think the general etiquette is that you're just expected to eat very tidily. There's also a case of Western etiquette classes, and they teach you that you shouldn't tuck the napkin into your collar, or that food generally falls onto your lap more than staining your shirt. However, I've seen others complain that keeping the napkin on your legs is hard and it just falls to the floor more often than they like. I think these are all very, very valid points. I'm just on team pro apron. Something I found a bit amusing was when Heidi Lau first came to the States, the hotpot chain. On TikTok and on Shorts, you'll see influencers shocked at how they'll offer you things like an apron, hair tie, or even like a plastic bag to put your phone in so it doesn't get dirty. That's how I felt when I went to Asia. I feel like to them that's just a given at some restaurants, but to the West, it's literally a foreign concept. We should totally normalize aprons, or even just the paper ones, being available at more restaurants than just the ones that imply that you'll have a messy eating experience. Now, I love wearing aprons whenever I eat at home. I have this super duper adorable Rilakkuma apron that I bought from a previous Japan trip, and I am 100% okay with it getting stained or dirty, because that's what an apron is for. I'd rather get that one apron dirty than have a bunch of other clothes I wear at home get dirty from food. I just consider it well-loved. This is a part of a video series on travel tips that I want to share with you from what I learned during my travels to Asia. If you liked watching this video, check this one about luggage tips in Japan, or this one that's recommended for you. I stream pack openings for TCGs like Pokemon on Twitch, and if you want to support the channel, consider joining the membership or other ways listed in the description box below. Bye for now!